Good afternoon, Chicagoland, and welcome to another edition of the Green Radio Network. Here on the Green Radio Network, we'll bring you a variety of green topics and the latest information on green technology and transportation. This program features environmental leaders throughout northern Indiana and the entire nation. The Green Radio Network is sponsored by NERPC, the Northwestern Indiana Regional Planning Commission, and the award-winning South Shore Clean Cities. Both entities are leaders in the environmental industry and work together to bring cleaner air and more sustainable living to northern Indiana. Now to introduce Carl Lissick, Executive Director of South Shore Clean Cities and the host of the show.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Mike. And Tristan, welcome to the show.
Carl, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
Well, I know there's a lot of great things that are going on with the Indiana Office of Energy Development. Why don't you tell our listeners, what is the Indiana Office of Energy Development, Tristan?
So the Office of Energy Development is Indiana's version of the Department of Energy.
Mm-hmm.
We handle energy grants and policy for the state of Indiana. We are not a regulator, but more kind of an ideas factory and funding source for energy opportunities in the state.
Right. And again, I think, you have been involved all over the state, and, with everything that you've done everything from alternative fuels to solar to wind applications. What other kinds of things have you been involved with?
We've been involved in a number of issues trying to enable opportunities for technologies to find their way into the marketplace. A major focus of our office is finding ways to reduce barriers, whether that barrier is legal issues, policy decisions, funding opportunities. We try to find ways to bring stakeholders and people throughout the state together to come up with solutions to enable adoption of new energy technologies and solutions.
Well, I know one of the programs that we had the pleasure of working with you on, and we work with pretty much everything that we do with South Shore Clean Cities in coordination with the Indiana Office of Energy Development. But one of the most recent programs was the Hoosier Homegrown Fuels Blender Pump Program. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about that, Tristan?
Yeah, thank you, Carl. The Hoosier Homegrown Fuel Blender Pump Program is a program to expand availability of biofuels throughout the state of Indiana. The program pays for a portion of the blender pump dispensers for higher blend ethanol. We're putting in about 52 new ethanol pumps throughout the state. About a third of the winners, or a third round of winners, will be announced soon. Prior to the program, we had about 185 dedicated ethanol fueling stations with fuels above E10, which is what general gasoline is. With this program, we hope to expand that significantly, enable more consumers' options at the pump.
Well, again, I know that ethanol has been around for a long time. I know our Indianapolis 500 will be featuring ethanol-fueled vehicles. And so with our Hoosier Homegrown Fuels Blender Pump Program, where does that money come from, Tristan?
The grants made possible by funds from the Indiana Corn Marketing Council and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And the grant program is also a partnership, Carl, as you're aware, with South Shore's Clean Cities, as well as the State Department of Agriculture and Greater Indiana Clean Cities as well. So the program has been a great partnership between public, private, nonprofit organizations around the state. And we've brought together a broad group of stakeholders between agriculture, the environment, and transportation sectors to make this program come to life.
And again, I think it's been very well received across the entire state. And so who has received these grants so far, Tristan?
Well, to date, we've awarded nearly $1 million through the program. And for your listeners, they'll probably be very interested to know that Family Express is going to be one of the partners, as well as Speedway. Family Express is installing pumps in Jasper, Lake, LaPorte, Porter, St. Joseph, Stark, Tippecanoe, and White counties. And Speedway is going to be installing pumps in Lake County as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. And again, I think there's was Thornton's one of those awardees also?
Yes, Thornton's will be putting in some pumps in southern Indiana as well to expand the reach of ethanol throughout the state.
And again, I think people are interested in reducing their carbon footprint and hearing about different fueling incentives and opportunities. So, are there additional opportunities for this project, Tristan?
Yes, our office just recently closed the third round of applications, and depending on where the funds are after this round, we may be able to provide a fourth round of funding this summer. The information for this grant and all of our energy grants are available at energy.in.gov for people who are interested.
And again, as we kind of switch gears from fuels, let's talk a little bit about the community conservation project and some of the grant opportunities that you've had with that, Tristan.
Yeah, the Community Conservation Challenge is an exciting program that seeks to build support for energy efficiency and energy generation projects in schools, commercial facilities, industrial buildings, or other public use facilities around the state. In addition to the energy component, what we are looking for in these projects is an impact on the community, or ways to provide educational opportunities for people, for their neighbors or others in the community where these projects are occurring. Our latest round did 6 projects from around the state to bring that energy and community aspect together.
And then with some of those projects, could you talk a little bit about those projects, Tristan?
Yeah, so I think it's specifically in Northwest Indiana, we've had a couple projects here recently that I'm pretty excited about. The first project I want to mention, and one that you're well aware of, Carl, is the Lake County Courthouse Foundation and their local partners throughout the area. They're doing a lot of energy projects within a historical building, which can be pretty complicated. There aren't a whole lot of projects that serve as examples for historic preservation. So we're really excited about this as kind of a leader, not just in Indiana, but across the nation, and how do you preserve a historic building through energy conservation and energy projects.
Sure. And then I know that you had also awarded a grant to the Tri-Creek School Corporation.
Yes, Tri-Creek Schools in Lowell is another one that's pretty exciting. The schools will be adding solar panels, which will power about 90% of the energy use for their new transportation center. I mentioned earlier, education is a key part of what we're looking for with the Community Conservation Challenge. And Tri-Creek is pretty interesting in that they're taking the data from their solar panels and will use it in students' classes. This will give kids an opportunity to learn hands-on with real-life applications of technologies and really experience decisions that are going on in the real world. Something the school mentioned to us was students often deal with theoretical solutions or theoretical situations and numbers, something that can be very disconnected from the real world as they're working with imaginary problems that may not be relevant to things they're going to experience after school. But this project is going to give them hands-on experience with solar installations and will let them work with the types of questions that businesses like project developers or energy companies deal with when it comes to solar installation and how that impacts energy use.
You know, I know another award that I'd like to talk to you about is one with the Hoosier Interfaith Power and Light project. And again, with many of our religious organizations and their buildings, trying to reduce their carbon footprint and reduce costs. And tell our listeners a little bit about how this all came about.
Yeah, this is a pretty interesting collection of groups across different faiths to come up with ways to provide energy conservation and education to not just their congregations, but also their peers and also their neighbors throughout the state of Indiana. So we've had a couple faith-based groups in your listeners' backyard that have applied for opportunities. Two of those include Progressive Community Church in Gary and New Ebenezer Missionary Baptist Church in Maryville.
Okay.
These two were part of a group of 5 faith-based organizations from around the state that came together to do a series of projects that involved both solar power and energy efficiency. They organized a series of energy conservation and solar workshops as well for local communities and for their congregations. They also put together a statewide youth conservation training program and statewide forum for church leaders on energy issues. And the result was they had nearly a third of their congregation participate in energy efficiency projects, as well as quite a few folks in their local communities participate as well.
And then, that's very interesting, and I know a lot of our listeners will be interested in hearing more about, these projects. And I know there was another project that was awarded the City of Fort Wayne, and why don't you talk a little bit about that project?
Yeah, Fort Wayne City Utilities is going to undergo a lighting and structural upgrade to their heating and air conditioning systems. And that project will reduce nearly 50% of the cooling requirements and 60% of their total energy consumption. And that will enable them to better serve ratepayers in the city of Fort Wayne to reduce cost for services.
Which is wonderful. And as we see this program or project moving forward, Tristan, again, I think this is a pretty wide open opportunity for organizations to work together. And why don't you talk a little bit more about that as, potentially before this grant potentially might come out again, how people can plan to maybe, apply for something like this?
Yes, Carl, we're specifically looking for how we can bring together communities through energy projects and how we can educate folks on what they can do to save energy and reduce their energy bills. So projects that incorporate not just the energy component, whether that's energy conservation or energy alternative generation, but also something that's publicly visible or something that really has a community impact and educational component, something where people are reaching out to their neighbors and friends to give them advice on, here's ideas on how to save energy and here's how I've done it. So projects that kind of bring together the community for discussions on energy are things that we are always excited and interested in.
Well, and again, I think, the ease of applying for these, Tristan, I guess that's one thing. I think a lot of times people are intimidated about looking at these opportunities that, it's difficult to work with the government. And I think, just from working with your team at the Indiana Office of Energy, that it's not like that at all. And can you tell us a little bit about that opportunity really is that this is it's a user-friendly program, and working with our state energy office is not difficult at all.
Certainly. We, as a state energy office, we're trying to serve all Hoosiers throughout the state. And being easy to work with is something we try to make for every project we have available. We are always available for calls or emails or reaching out to us for any questions related to energy. The best way to reach out to us is our contact information on energy.in.gov, but we also have a number of social media outlets as well. But as the Office of Energy Development for the state, we are always looking for ways that we can provide assistance to Hoosiers on energy issues.
Well, Tristan, we're going to take a break right now. You're listening to the Green Radio Network on AM 1420 WIMS Radio. I'm your host, Carl Lissick, and we'll be right back with Mr. Tristan Vance of the Indiana Office of Energy Development right after this.
There's nothing more important than spending time outdoors with your family. That's why it's so important to do whatever you can to keep our air clean. It's good for the environment and good for the health of your friends and family. Take a closer look at how poor quality is affecting our community. Across the 3 counties of Northwest Indiana, recent studies from the American Lung Association show that 9% of adults suffer from asthma, 4% live with chronic bronchitis, 38% have a form of cardiovascular disease, 10% of the children in Lake and LaPorte counties struggle with pediatric asthma. Now, the number of adults with asthma is nearly that of adults with diabetes. Consider how diabetics make adjustments to their diet in order to be as healthy as possible. Everyone can make adjustments to improve air quality and the quality of life for those who live with asthma and other lung diseases. Northwest Indiana, clean air, think green, breathe easy. A message from NERPC.
Welcome back to the Green Radio Network here on AM 1420 WIMS Radio. Carl Lissick of South Shore Clean Cities here to bring you the latest information on green projects and topics across the nation. Our guest today is Mr. Tristan Vance. He's the director of the Indiana Office of Energy Development. Again, Tristan, we just thank you for your time for being on here. And I know there was a local project here in the Michigan City area that was also awarded a community conservation grant, and that was Al's Supermarkets. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was a fantastic partnership. Al's Supermarkets, obviously being a local grocery store, has a number of ways to reach out to the community. And we partnered, with your assistance, Carl, with the Michigan City stores on Franklin Street as well as Carwick Plaza, and did a lighting retrofit to significantly reduce the energy demand on those facilities. Al's also promoted energy conservation through their Al's Good Neighbor program and did some outreach for their customers as well as the public about energy efficiency and conservation projects and practices and ways for them to reduce their bills.
You know, it's interesting working with many of these businesses and community organizations that you do, Tristan. I think we see how really philanthropic people are, and people are really trying to do the right thing across our great state of Indiana. And I think it's just interesting, that as we highlight some of these businesses and some of these organizations that, they like to share their information. They'd like to educate the general public and their customers on doing the right things.
Yes, a lot of our businesses, really bring a lot of truth to the saying about Hoosier hospitality. We have a lot of folks who really do have a great interest in how they can improve their communities and how they can provide their friends and neighbors information and tips and ideas on how they can save money and save energy. So we've been able to develop a series of great partnerships with companies like Alice Supermarkets and with schools like Tri Creek to provide more outreach around the state.
And so, again, I think there was another interesting project I'd like to talk about. It's the Logansport Juvenile Detention Center. Can you talk a little bit about that, Tristan?
Yeah, we recently entered into a partnership with our Indiana Department of Corrections to improve education and training for children who are in their juvenile facilities, specifically at Logansport. This partnership is going to install a solar water heating system at the Logansport Juvenile Correctional Facility, and that's going to include the piping, hardware, and other physical systems within the system, within the facility. A pretty exciting part of the project is the energy management system, or smart board, if you will, that's going to be incorporated into the educational materials in the kids' science curriculum. So the facility serves kids ranging in age from 12 to 17 years old, and the project will give them hands-on experience with practical science and with skills for installation that they can put into practice in the real world. This includes using the data from the smart board energy management system to get training on what actually happens when you install solar, how this can reduce energy demand, and how this can impact time of use. So we hope this knowledge and experience for the kids will enable them to take something back with them for real life skills and experience, and give them an idea of what the working world is like and what career paths are available for them.
So as we talk about all these opportunities, all these different projects that are going on throughout our state, Tristan, what are some of the other opportunities, and where can people find out more about some of these opportunities in our state?
Yeah, Carl, the opportunities are always changing, but we will have more opportunities this summer and fall. And the best way to find out is by checking out our website, energy.ia.gov, for information updates. We also have social media that people can check out, but never hesitate to reach out to us on questions about funding opportunities.
So an overall strategy for our state. So how does this fit into our overall strategy, energy strategy for the state?
Yes, so the projects we've been pursuing and the projects I've been talking about kind of fit into the big picture policy for Indiana, which is we have an all-the-above approach to energy in the state. We want to maximize our potential throughout different energy sources, but also help citizens conserve energy as well and reduce their bills. So we've done a number of solar and wind projects that contribute to our overall energy mix by giving us a balance of energy sources to fuel and power our economy.
And as we talk about the future of Indiana, the future of what you think things will look like 5 years from now, is there something that you see? We recently had our guest was a solar organization that talked about the future of solar and how it's been, solar has been growing so quickly in our state and throughout the Midwest. Is there other things that we should be looking at as environmentalists?
Yeah, it's always exciting with new technologies available and how that can change the mix. We've seen an explosion of renewable opportunities throughout the state of Indiana. Indiana is now a top 15 in both wind and solar production, which a lot of people don't realize.
Right.
And we've pursued a lot of projects in the state. And I think as technology improves and as costs come down, we're going to start seeing a lot of projects that 5 years ago or even today may not make sense, but 5 years from now, as technology continues to improve, we're going to start seeing things that we may not have thought of just a couple of years ago.
Well, again, Tristan, it's always a pleasure working with you and your team. I think that you are very efficient in regards to, working together, returning phone calls, and then really just assisting everyone, from renewable energy, to alternative fuels. I think the State Energy Office is really a very efficient, well organized group that does a great job throughout our state. So congratulations to you and your team. So thank you for all the great work you guys do.
I appreciate it, Carl, and I want to thank you as well for being an excellent partner in northern Indiana and help us deploy technology and give consumers options.
So any closing thoughts, Tristan, as our show comes to an end?
I think it's important that we continue to build partnerships across different industries and across our state as a whole to come up with solutions to power our economy and give Hoosiers more economic opportunity, because energy is frequently tied to our economy. Sure. It powers what we do, and energy cost will have a direct impact on businesses and jobs. So all the things we can do to come together as a society to come up with these solutions are going to be things that help improve our economy and improve our competitiveness with overseas competition, and give Hoosiers more opportunity for meaningful and productive careers.
Well, and that will do it for today's edition of the Green Radio Network. I'm your host, Carl Lissick, and thanks again to our guest, Mr. Tristan Vance with the Indiana Office of Energy Development. And be sure to join us again on WIMS Radio and Girard Media for the next edition of the Green Radio Network. And visit us online at southshorecleancities.org.